Do you have a dream car? Mine is the Lucid Air. Are you intrigued by electric vehicles? The Lucid Air EV has been called the best driving car in the world. And the Lucid Air Sapphire is certifiably the fastest production car in the world. Listen to Lucid Driver Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts or at luciddriver.buzzsprout.com.
Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising books, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, as well as other fun, informative global cruise personalities. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests. If you hear about a cruise that interests you, book it at www.thejoyofacation.com or enter to win a free cruise for two. Again, www.thejoyofacation.com. We really appreciate your feedback, so leave us a text. Paul can't reply, but he may read your text on the air.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul, and let me introduce my co-host for today's episode, Cheryl.
Hi.
Welcome to this episode featuring our reflections on Virgin Voyages' newest ladyship, Brilliant Lady, which we had the pleasure to sail March 12th through 21 on a special sailing known as Red Hot Sailing Club Voyage. There are special voyages, I think there's a couple per year, that feature a guest performance. In our case, legendary performer and songwriter Nile Rodgers and his group Chic, guest speakers like the Virgin Voyages CEO, Nirmal Saverimuttu, and other special events. In some past Red Hot Sailing Club voyages, Virgin Group Chairman Richard Branson, or should I say Sir Richard Branson, made an appearance. He was not billed to appear on ours, but on the last seaday, which was supposed to include a stop at Bimini, Virgin Voyages' private island in the Bahamas, Branson appeared on board. As we have pointed out in the past, this is not a review. There are much worthier content creators who do a good job of comprehensive reviews on YouTube with video. These are our reflections from a limited perspective, our own. So if we cruise during NBA season, we're going to miss some shows and events because Lakers and Warriors, and a real YouTube content creator is not going to make that sacrifice. And I am sure there were some good shows and events we missed. Our itinerary was wonderful, one of the best we'd seen for a 10-day cruise. 4 stops, including 3 we haven't been to. Vassatier, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. John's, Antigua, Puerto Plata, Dominican Republic, and Beach Club at Bimini, Bahamas.
Brilliant boarding was unremarkable. I know sometimes boarding can be unpleasant, but it may be due to circumstances beyond the cruise line control. We've only had 2 experiences to draw from, but I can say Virgin Voyages has been seamless. One funny story. As we were waiting to hand our 3 bags to the luggage porter, the couple before us was completing their transaction and was about to walk away. The porter said, "Don't you want to tip me?" They must have been first-time cruisers. We usually give $10, roughly $10 for 3 bags. I'm sure some give more, some give less. But for your new and aspiring cruisers, give something or you'll end up being put in an awkward situation like the couple before us found themselves in. Embarrassing, to say the least. Not only is it the right thing to do, we must understand they're not cruise line employees. And the last thing you want to do to kick off the first cruise is to piss off the first link in the process of getting your luggage to your cabin. Well, the next day was Thursday, was our first full day at sea. After sleeping in longer than we like to admit to, we finally started our day at the plainly named The Pizza Place, where Paul ordered the cleverly named pizza Pretty Fly for white pie. I ordered a vegan arugula pie, and we shared a large chicken Caesar salad with avocado and jalapeno. A great way to start the day. After stopping at the Grounds Club, Virgin's extra charge espresso and tea concession for a couple of lattes, we headed to the pool to people watch and chill out until it was time to go to dinner.
It was a nice way to spend the afternoon, although I learned a disappointing lesson sitting around the pool. On my last cruise, I think it was on Star Princess, someone turned me on to a Bailey's Pina Colada, which was absolutely delicious. And many of us know pina coladas are delicious even without Bailey's help. So during the time sitting around the pool, I had 2 Bailey's Pina Coladas. And Cheryl had our other cruise favorite, a Miami Vice, which is a mix of pina colada and a strawberry daiquiri. That night, while reviewing the day's charges to our account, I noticed, much to my surprise, that those 2 Bailey's Pina Coladas cost me a whopping $24 each, the most I had ever paid for a cocktail. Even beat the time when we were living in Florida and we hung out in South Beach, Miami, where drinks were around $20 a piece. For each Bailey's Pina Colada, it actually listed 2 drinks. A pina colada for $12 and then a Bailey's cocktail for $12. I went to Sailor Services to point out that I did not order 2 $12 cocktails. I ordered 1 Bailey's Pina Colada. As I've learned in other interactions with cruise ship customer service, they have virtually no authority to make a decision, and I was told they would check with the boss there. The bottom line is I paid nearly $50 for 2 Bailey Pina Coladas. By the way, I have no idea what I paid for the mini Bailey Pina Coladas I had on Star Princess, where I was first turned on to them, because I had a drink package. So for those of you who haven't sailed Virgin, they don't have traditional drink packages. Our first dinner on that first night was a good way to kick off our discussion of one of the high points of Virgin Voyages, and that is the food. So our first dinner was at Rojo, which features Spanish-oriented cuisine. Now, for those listeners who have been on Virgin Voyages but not on Brilliant Lady, Rojo is the new to the Virgin Voyages brand restaurant held in the evening only inside of Razzle Dazzle, a restaurant that's on all the lady ships, as Virgin Voyages vessels are called, that focuses primarily but not exclusively on vegetarian and vegan cuisine. Among its exciting menu, Rojo featured tapas, which I loved. I like to think of tapas, which are served on small or medium plates, as Spanish finger foods or comfort foods. Rojo was delicious on Brilliant. We did not otherwise experience Razzle Dazzle on this trip, but we enjoyed it on Scarlet Lady and strongly recommend that you check it out. Razzle Dazzle is one of several specialty dining type culinary venues. I say specialty dining type because unlike on most other cruise ships, these specialty dining experiences are included in your fare. Other specialty venues on all the ladies' ships are as follows. The Wake, which looks out over the wake of the ship. It is kind of Virgin Voyages steak and seafood house. Our dinner in the wake was so good. I had New York strip steak, and Cheryl had pan-roasted Atlantic salmon, that we went back to the wake for lunch, where I had an absolutely amazing filet mignon and a wedge salad, and Cheryl had poached shrimp. The wake offers clam chowder that is served with the soup's ingredients clustered at the bottom of the bowl, and then the wake person pours broth over the ingredients. I first had that on my Virgin sailing of a couple of years ago on Scarlet Lady, which at that time I found to be very novel. But I since have experienced that method of serving several times for soups on other cruise lines. Not saying Virgin Voyages started it, but that I don't recall noticing it before experiencing it on Virgin. The Wake and Razzle Dazzle are the only two Virgin specialty restaurants that serve lunch.
We'll be right back.
The Joy Vacation by Dream Vacations invites you to join us on a bucket list adventure to Africa. We're going to Kenya and Egypt for 14 days, April 10th through April 24th, 2027. A week in Kenya, including safaris, and a week in Egypt, including the pyramids and a 4-day Nile River cruise. This adventure includes air from the U.S., all transfers, all accommodations, private tours, and many meals. $5,000 to $5,500, depending on air, per person. Double occupancy. Only $250 per person deposit due at booking. The remainder is not due until late 2026. For a detailed itinerary, online brochure, and to book, email me at pthornton, Thornton, pthornton @dreamvacations.com.
Another specialty restaurant on Virgin is called Extra Virgin, which focuses on Italian cuisine, one of my favorites. It seemed to us Extra Virgin on Brilliant Lady was not quite as elegant as it was on Scarlet Lady, but we may be misremembering. Also, the menu seems to have changed, and not necessarily for the better. Paul ordered a spaghetti dish, mainly because it included anchovies, which he loves, and he found it kind of basic and something he doesn't ever recall ordering in an Italian restaurant. Sailors have long raved about Extra Virgin, so make sure you reserve as early as you can. Another specialty restaurant was Peak Agave, which offers an upscale Mexican-inspired cuisine. No fajitas, tacos are here. Based on conversations we've had with guests, the most popular dish there was one I ordered on the previous visit, was a steak dish, or what Paul had ordered on a previous dish was a steak dish. We can't pronounce the name, but it featured steak smothered in some kind of cheese, and it was absolutely delicious. We had heard when we had heard about it when we were on Scarlet Lady, but this time we opted not to have it. We wanted something different, but what we had was very delicious. There are two other specialty restaurants available on Lady ships, both of which we ate at on Scarlet Lady, but we passed on Brilliant Lady because we wanted to experience the diversity of the eats throughout the lady ships. The first is the Test Kitchen, which specializes in gastro cuisine, kind of similar to what they do at Wonderland. I'm sure many sailors who are not adventurous when it comes to food pass on the Test Kitchen. And from the reviews, I can tell a fair number of sailors find it not for them. We enjoyed it and left the Test Kitchen full and fulfilled. Our recommendation is after your reservation, and all the ladyship specialty restaurants require reservations. Have a plan to pick up a burger or pizza or something elsewhere on the ship, just in case the test kitchen doesn't do it for you. The other specialty we did not do on Brilliant was gambay, which specializes in Korean-style cooking done right at your table by a wait person. The food at gambay is absolutely delicious, as good as any of the Virgin Voyages specialty restaurants. The challenge of eating there is that it's communal dining, where you sit with others you don't know, and a drinking game that takes place between courses. Don't worry, you can choose to drink water versus the delicious sake. However, if you're an off-the-chart introvert like us, you will approach the experience with a lot of apprehension. Honestly, it turned out to be a lot of fun as we had a good group, and I think that would be the case in general with the largely friendly fellow sailors we tend to meet on Virgin. Mostly boomers like us, but I just think you should be aware of the format.
The lady ships do not have a buffet, but they do have something that is much, much better: the galley. The galley is like an upscale food hall where there are a number of stations, kind of boutique eateries ranging from basic to very unique. In virtually all the stations, food is prepared to order. Perhaps the most popular is called the diner, where you can get breakfast 24 hours a day. During lunch and dinner, the diner also offers a variety of hearty mains like meatloaf, various casseroles, and sides and vegetables. Next to the diner, there is an area called the burger bar. Surprise, a grill for burgers, hot dogs, and fries. Then a station called Well Bread that had a rotating selection of flatbreads featuring interesting toppings. In fact, by mid-cruise, I was kind of perturbed that I could not find anchovies anywhere, although I had some things that had supposedly anchovies in them, in the salad dressing, for instance. Well, at Well Bread one day, they had a flatbread selection that was just loaded down with anchovies. Besides Well Bread, there's an area featuring desserts and fresh fruit bowls. In our view, the desserts seemed to have improved since our previous sailing. They we especially like the treat called coconut macaroon, which really is an understatement because it was nothing like a coconut macaroon. It probably should have been called a coconut tart. It was just delicious. Around the corner was a station to pick up sushi bento boxes called Bento Baby, and we visited them regularly. Sometimes several times in a day. Next to them was another place we visited regularly, a large standalone station specialized in salads of various kinds called the Daily Mix, but made the inexcusable omission of anchovies as a topping. One of the worst things a food service worker can say to me is that there are anchovies in the salad dressing. That's kind of what I just alluded to. No, no, no. But making up for that faux pas, I have to say, in the morning, the Daily Mix transformed into a bagel station. And they gave you enough salmon, capers, cream cheese, red onions, and a huge dollop of avocado to feed 2 people. The Daily Mix also offered a daily soup special, and some of the choices were great. Opposite the stations I mentioned so far that are clustered together like the diner and the burger bar are a series of stations that tend to get overlooked because they closed mid-afternoon, much earlier than the rest of the galley. This cruise, we were very conscious of that and ensured we tried all of those early closing stations. And was that ever a great decision? The first station was called Let's Taco About It, where we both got shrimp tacos out of many choices that we could have had. Then right next to it was a place called Hot Off the Press, which specialized in things like paninis and just loaded avocado toast, which Cheryl loved. My favorite was a bacon, avocado, and tomato on rye sandwich. Then next was Noodle Around, which offered ramen dishes. For lunch one day, we ordered a spicy Thai peanut and shrimp curry dish. Yum.
Dispersed throughout the galley are coffee, included soft drink stations. Yep, that's right, soda. And yes, that can be a huge benefit for many sailors like Paul, who simply refuses to have a meal without a soda. There's a bar in the galley that also serves premium espresso and tea drinks called Ground Clubs too. Remember, we mentioned the other grounds club earlier. There are a number of other venues to grab something to eat throughout the day, and Paul and I actually were able to put together dinners in our room on the nights the Warriors and the Lakers were on early. We mentioned the pizza place earlier. Small whole pies also made to order. Several flavors also available as well as the pie of the day. The pizza place also had a selection of salads. Down the corridor was the social club, a hub for a gathering as it contained a couple of TVs, always on ESPN, and was a main venue for trivia, and it led into the arcade. Yes, Virgin Voyages has a complimentary arcade loaded with OG games like Space Invaders and Pac-Man. Most importantly, they have a great snacks like chicken wings, popcorn, and more. And wings became and always a compliment to Warriors and the Laker games. Yet another place with great complimentary food was the dock, a gorgeous area upstairs from the Wake restaurant modeled after a Greek seaside cafe. Both outside on the dock as well as inside, sailors can stretch out on couches, loungers, and often with a live music act, and Greek tapas are served. Lastly, we would sit around the pool for hours at a time. We were able to walk over to the Sun Club Cafe for poke bowls with salmon or tuna. We have spent a lot of time on food, and that's in part because we made a conscious decision to be more intentional about trying all the brilliant lady eats in addition to their restaurants. If it sounds like what we did most is eat, drink, chill out by the pool, and watch basketball, that would be a fair conclusion. Wouldn't you say, Paul?
I'd say. We did very little in the way of entertainment. Hopefully, we didn't miss too much. After all, one of the best shows I have ever experienced at sea was performed by a headliner on our last Virgin Voyages cruise, a hypnotist named Nadine Manuel, who made a believer out of me. We hardly experienced Brilliant Lady's diva. It's interesting because the diva on our previous Virgin Voyage, Dixie Crystals, who's been on the podcast twice, was seemingly everywhere. I recall in our Reflections podcast of that cruise mentioning that she was akin to a cruise director on other lines. Now, I don't know if Virgin Voyages has made a conscious effort to scale back the role of the diva, or maybe just that we didn't go to diva-involved events like we did on Scarlet Lady. Because when I met Dixie Crystals early on the cruise on Scarlet Lady and got her agreement to come on the podcast, I made an effort to see as much of her as possible, knowing she was going to come on the show. Of course, Scarlet Night was a vibe, as it always is on Virgin Voyages. But for the second straight Virgin cruise, we miss the magical pool party, which I hear is a fantastic culmination to the raucous events of Scarlet Night, as it was canceled both times due to weather and moved inside. And both times, rather than be stuffed inside with a whole lot of people, we crashed. One thing I do know is that Virgin is making a conscious effort in the area of stand-up comedy. They had 3, and all 3 were good. Of course, unconstrained by the need to be family friendly. As you all know, Virgin is adults only. Carnival, the king of comedy, needn't worry yet, but clearly Virgin Voyages is trending in the right direction, particularly versus our previous sailing where the diva was as funny as the comedians. I do have a humorous aside about that. While we were sampling the galley on Brilliant Lady shortly after boarding, we sat next to a woman. It was a black woman who told us with a clear British accent that this was her first Virgin cruise. So we shared our thoughts about what our new friend should check out. I kind of dissed the comedy I had experienced on Scarlet Lady, blurting out that they had this British guy whose comedy I didn't think worked that well with the largely American audience. Then I realized I just dissed the British language to a person from Britain. She sensed my embarrassment and let me down easy, stating, most UK stand-up doesn't do much for her neither. We approached the last day on board Brilliant Lady with a lot of anticipation for 2 reasons. One, we were going to dock at Bimini, Virgin Voyages' private island. If you have heard the recent episode I did with Dixie Crystals, the former diva of Scarlet Lady and Brilliant Lady, I asked her specifically about Bimini because we didn't get to experience it on Scarlet Lady. And she absolutely raved about it. Number 2, the second reason for our anticipation was that evening, music legend Nile Rodgers and his group Chic was going to perform a show around the pool. Alas, that morning, the captain, who virtually never makes announcements on Virgin ships, came on to say we could not dock at Bimini due to winds. We were very disappointed, but experienced cruisers know these things happen. I wondered if Nile Rodgers and Chic would still happen, as I figured they would be boarding the ship in Bimini.
Well, later that morning, Richard Branson himself came on the PA system. We just assumed he was addressing us from the UK. He apologized about Brilliant Lady missing Bimini. He did reassure us that Nile Rodgers and Chic would be on that evening. And then he told us about a special announcement around the pool at 4 p.m. When we went to the pool at the time of the announcement, it seemed like everyone was aboard Brilliant Lady was there. And then at 4, a group of people were led on stage by Sir Richard, and the crowd went nuts. The special announcement was about the Virgin Voyages rendezvous at sea on February 16th, 2027, when all 4 Virgin Voyages lady ships will meet at sea for the very first time in a once-in-a-ship-time celebration called Sisters at Sea. Richard Branson drew 4 names from the cruisers on Brilliant Lady and awarded them a free cruise on one of the lady ships for the sailings that would culminate in the rendezvous at sea. Of course, we didn't win, as we would have shouted that out in our intro. Then Sir Richard jumped in the pool.
Later that day, we walked right into Branson and his entourage. I handed him a card from the Joy of Cruising podcast and implored him to come on the show. I said, ask Dixie about me. And I also said, you'll be in good company because Richard Payne, the chairman of Royal Caribbean, has been on. I can only hope, but if you don't ask, you'll never get a yes. As expected, Nile Rodgers and Chic turned it out that evening. We had seen them before at the Essence Music Fest, and they not only have their hits they played, but played many hits Nile Rodgers has written for others, like Diana Ross and Madonna, just to name a couple. We disembarked the next day, concluding that as much as we enjoyed our first Virgin Voyages cruise, this one was slightly better. I was a bit apprehensive going into the cruise. Prior to our first Virgin Voyage cruise, I had never read a bad review about the cruise line up to that. But since that time, I've read some lackluster reviews, and some suggested that Virgin Voyages, which has been dominating cruise awards for the past few years, was kind of becoming less novel and more like other lines. Nope, it is still all that, and I can't wait to cruise Virgin Voyages again. Join us next week for Rose Perry, Sip, Watch, Travel, attorney, certified sommelier, cruise lover, and world traveler. And as we like to say, we'll see you on the ocean.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again for $18.99 can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.